Hi guys. Okay, that was part one, your basic kitchen knife grind types. A lot of people are not familiar. To most people, especially in the 30 or so years I've been in the cutlery business, to most people, kitchen knife grinds are all the same, and they're not, as I've just shown you. So that should give you a better idea as to how to apply a honing rod to your knives to keep them sharp, or even a sharpening stone to your knives. But a lot of the times people ask me over the years, what is it that makes a knife dull? And beyond the fact of taking a knife and just hacking away at something with it, there are many reasons. And so a lot of people actually misuse their knives inadvertently. Even though they don't want to, they end up using them the wrong way, trying to guess how they will react to the chore at hand. So I'm just going to cover a few of the basic reasons why a knife will go dull. And the number one reason in my book that a knife will go dull is improper pressure. If your knife is sharp, you don't have to effort to make your knife cut. All right? You should let the edge do the work. Just as I tell people all the time, don't push on a stone or on a rod. Let the abrasive do the work. Because I explained, when you take a knife to the steel, if you push too hard, the blade will roll this way. And then when you come to the other side and push hard, the blade will roll this way. So you have to let the knife do the work. Improper pressure can flatten a knife edge or roll a knife edge very quickly. Also, the medium that you're cutting on, in other words, your cutting board, can affect how long a knife will stay sharp. And I've got a whole other series on cutting boards that I think will please and surprise a lot of people. But a lot of your synthetic cutting boards will take the edge away from your knife quicker than a good old-fashioned hard rock maple board. So the medium that you're cutting on, if you have one of these acrylic boards or synthetic glass boards in your home and you notice your knives are going dull quick, get rid of it and get wood. Okay? Another thing that'll affect how long or how short a knife will stay sharp is the hardness of the steel. Now I told you a lot of European and American made knives have a Rockwell hardness of between 56 and we'll say 60. And that's a fairly decent range, but it's also a range that requires more honing and more resharpening. So your steel hardness will dictate how long your knives will stay sharp. When you have a Japanese knife at a 65 Rockwell, it's going to stay sharp for a long time, but it's also going to be harder to sharpen if you have an incorrect or an improper abrasive. The softness of the steel of your knife will dictate how long the knife will stay sharp or what causes it to go dull. If you have an old-fashioned knife in your kitchen, something that belonged to grandma or grandpa that turned black with age, that's a non-stainless. It's called carbon steel. Carbon steel generally has a hardness of between 55 and 58 depending on when it was made. Today's average, they can harden carbon at about 56, 58 Rockwell. But it's soft, so it's going to go dull quicker and also go dull really quick depending on what kind of medium you're cutting on. So they all interrelate to each other. Another reason that a knife will go dull is, what are you cutting? Okay, if you're taking a standard French or a modified French and trying to bone out some ribs, that's going to dull a knife very quickly because ribbing is the chore of a cleaver and not the chore of a French or a modified French knife. Now, yes, you can bone out a chicken with a French knife because all you're doing is looking for the rotator in the joint and it's soft. But to use a knife like this, to do bones, okay, to do wood, to do anything other than kitchen chores will dull it very quickly. Obviously, another reason a knife will go dull is general misuse. Using a knife like a screwdriver, using a knife like a chisel or shaver, it doesn't work, it'll go dull. Another reason a knife will go dull is improper honing, like I stated last week. If you're too high to the honing medium, you do nothing but scratch up your primary grind. And if you're too low, you'll scratch up your primary grind. And if you're too high to the medium, you'll deform the blade. And also another reason a knife will go dull is improper stropping. And I'm going to cover stropping on another video. Stropping is done on a piece of leather, sometimes on a piece of paper, but stropping is different than honing on a rod. So there you have it, 10 reasons why a knife will go dull. I hope you like it, and in a second or two, I'm going to show you how to sharpen a knife on a rod, even though I told you rods are only for honing. Stay tuned. Okay guys, So like I told you last week, your honing rod is only for honing, for realigning, truing, or straightening the edge of your knife to allow it to cut longer, to stay sharper longer. But there is a way to actually sharpen a knife on a rod, and that means you have to get a new style honing rod. And there are two available. So to your mind, what's the hardest substance known to man? Diamonds. Diamonds has always been the hardest substance known to man. In fact, it rates 10 on the hardness scale. But what's right below a diamond is ceramic. It ranks about a number 9 in the hardness scale. Now, a lot of people look at these ceramic rods and they say they're too smooth to sharpen a knife. Okay, how can you do it? How can you do it? Because this ceramic is harder than the steel on your knife. Now, I told you last week that a honing rod, like I said, only straightens a blade. Okay, and that sharpening is the process of removing metal from a blade. So when you look at a ceramic rod like this, if you can see the gray inside of the white, that is metal removal. It's very slight, but it's there. And if I continue, it'll get darker and darker because this ceramic is removing a certain amount of metal from the blade. Hence, you're sharpening. So if you're a professional at work and you can't carry a stone in your bag, or the tri-stone at work isn't satisfactory because it's out of alignment, and I'm going to show you in later videos how to maintain your sharpening stones for optimum performance, because I'll tell you what, in 30 plus years in this business, I have not seen many people who massage or true their sharpening stones. So their stones bow, or their stones gully to one side or another, therefore they don't get a perfect match between the stone and the blade, therefore improper sharpening. But back to how to sharpen on a rod. Ta-da! Diamond rod. This is a diamond impregnated rod. Okay, the diamonds that go on this rod are mono-surfaced. And what I mean by mono-surfaced, like this. The diamonds are flat, like a piece of paper. Mono-surfaced diamonds. Now, some inferior diamond rods will use what they call polysurface diamonds. Polysurface diamonds look like a jagged cliff, and that's not the kind of rod and that's not the kind of stone you want to use on your knives. And a lot of people say today that they won't use diamonds, they're very aggressive, and that's just not the truth. Today's diamond technology is as gentle or as rough, depending on how you use it, as using natural stones or synthetic stones of another order, like India or crystalline or alumina. Okay? It just depends on how you use them. Okay? So if you work as a chef, as a cook, or even at home, and you don't have stones and you want your knives to get sharp, then you buy a diamond rod. Because this diamond rod at a 600 mesh or 600 grit, which is a medium range, will remove metal as you use it, lightly. As I said, you don't have to push. Lightly. This diamond rod will remove metal. Okay? Just remember your degree angle. Okay? This rod will take off a certain amount of metal. Okay? Now here's the thing about removing metal or sharpening a knife. When you look at the edge that you've created under a magnifying glass or a microscope, okay, that edge has all kinds of scratches. In order to scratch metal or anything, that means something had to dig its way into the metal. Therefore, when you're looking at a scratched surface of metal, it looks like lands and grooves. And each consecutive grit stone or each consecutive grit rod that you go to will micro bevel the lands down to the groove. And that's the principle. Each consecutive grit, the higher number the grit, the more micro beveling. The lower the number of grit, the more aggressive. That's your shaper. Okay? So it's all about micro beveling, and I tell people all day long in the shop, you can't sharpen a knife on just one stone. You have to go through a micro beveling process. Consecutive grits, a minimum of 3 stones. Now this rod, as I said, is a 600 mesh, or roughly a 600 grit. That is a medium grit. The rod that I'm using is about a 1200 to about a 1500 grit. Okay? Now this is sharp. Okay, I could go to work right now. You hear that? Okay. You hear that? Like my friend Bo says, you can hear the crickets. Okay, I could work with that right now. Yeah. I could work with that right now. But do I want to? No. Now I'm going to micro bevel it down using this ceramic rod. This ceramic rod will take even more steel off the knife, but not very much. Not very much. But what it's going to do, it's going to take those high lands and bring them down to the grooves. This mimicking a scratch. Here's the land, here's the groove. It's going to micro bevel this land down to this groove. Micro bevel. Very important to know. Especially if you want to get into sharpening. I love sharpening. It's an art, it's a talent, it's a tradable skill. Okay. Light strokes on the ceramic. There we go. Not too many. Watch what you're doing. Make sure you go from the end of the knife to the front. This is how you sharpen a knife in the field. Yeah, a couple more. Much better. Much better. So sharp. See it taking the hair? Here you go, Bo. More crickets. Okay? Dinner. Not. And like I said, check the cut. Okay? Check the cut. Feather. See how that works? Feather some cuts. Okay? That's my bird in the background. Pay no mind. I have to lock him up in the other room or else he'll drive us all crazy. Alright? Sharpen up for you. I can just keep on doing this day in and day out. Okay? There you have it. A knife that's been sharpened by Sharpening Rods. Okay? I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.